Harry, your work on traitors and pilgrimage have shown how powerful personal storytelling can be, especially when it opens up conversation about belief and identity. And the same is true of your new documentary, I'm sure, Harry Clark Goes to Rome. As someone who's worked their whole life in RE, I'm excited to explore how your experience can help teachers and pupils engage with stories that shape how we see the world, but also shape who we are. So you first came to attention for the rest of us in Traitors in 2024, which is a while ago now. During that experience, were there any conversations about religion or spirituality or kind of personal values that emerged? Or did it prompt you to reflect on your own story and beliefs?
No, I mean, people love to ask me, did you ever feel bad being in the Traitors when it's kind of against your religion to lie and go away through the series lying? And I was like, absolutely not. I mean, the best way to explain it is to me, the Traitors was just simply a game. Obviously it's a big game, everyone's watching, but if you bring it back to the basics or the structure of the game. It's just a game, So I have to remind everyone, I wasn't actually running around murdering people at night. Like they're still alive, they're still breathing, we're still friends. The best way to explain it is, look, I've grown up with five brothers and sisters, and imagine we're playing any game. And I mean, it's a big difference from the Traitors to say a game of Monopoly. But like I always say, if I was ever playing Monopoly with my brothers and sisters, I'd be the banker, and I'd steal a couple 500s on the side because if you can get away with it, then you've got a hand up. And it was just the same in the Traitors, it was a game and it never sat on my conscience because it was just a game, like I've said many a times. And when I finished it, I love to say, each night I was praying for forgiveness anyway, so I was all good on that sense. I covered my back.
Well, apart from learning that I'm never playing Monopoly with you,
Yeah.
I see why you say that. So let's go back before Traitors. What role did faith play in shaping your early life story?
Yeah, so I think the best thing about the Traitors is everyone got to see me sort of in my prime, as in I'd sort myself out mentally and physically, kind of. So at that point in my life, before I went on to Traitors, I had really learnt to value everything that was around me. So when I was in the army, which was just before the Traitors, obviously I was still in the army when I was on the Traitors, around the age of 20, I went through a time in my life where I really didn't believe in God, really. Like I would say I believed in God, but my faith was at its weakest. And even now, I say to everyone, it's just like a wave. Sometimes your faith feels a lot stronger, sometimes it feels a lot weaker. It depends on the day you wake up, but that's just the same as any relationship. And at that time in my life, when I was 20 years old, I was deployed in the army. I'd missed my family. I was away for like 18 months, obviously coming home here and there to split it up, but I was like back to back deployments overseas. At this time, I was 16, who's joined the army before that, and you sort of see what man can do to man. And it's kind of like you realize the scariness of life and you see the evil in the world. And it's very easy to question everything you knew about faith because, like I say, when you grow up as a kid, it's very easy to believe because you're thrown into church. I went to church because I didn't want to make my mum disappointed. I went to church because if I don't go on a Sunday, and I said no to my mum, she wouldn't then let me out for Sunday afternoon. So it was just easy. And that's why I had faith in my life. Then obviously I joined the army, like I said, at 16, and I was a boy in a man's world. I learned to grow up quickly. But then that whole period from 16 to 20, I'd seen so much stuff. And the main thing that really sat for me was the amount of friends I lost to suicide and the amount of friends I lost to mental health. And that probably, of course, it hits hard anyway when you lose someone, but that probably hit that little bit harder just because they've lost the war in their own mind instead of the war that we're trained to do. So it's
Yeah.
always like, oh, why did they not speak to me one more time? Or I wonder if I could have just said something to them that day, but and then in the army, you just sort of get on with it. You sort of create these emotions where you just have to keep going forward. You just have to keep moving. And this again was a time in my life when I was 20 years old, like I've said, and I was deployed. And then everything started going down the drain. So I'd split up with my ex, who I was with for 7 years, and I thought
Wow.
that was going to be the person I'd married, the only person I'd ever been with. And then it's, that simple old heartbreak, your first heartbreak. You feel like no one's ever going to love you again, and that wasn't even the worst part. I then got like called back from deployment because of medical issues, because obviously I started drinking, smoking, and sort of like, well, no one's ever going to love me again. So then I lost self-confidence because I started getting really heavy and I was overweight for my age. Like I was a boxer who was always fit, who was
Yeah.
always fighting, who was always on the ball. And then I started losing myself, and then I hit to like 100 kilos, was sent back off deployment, came to my family. At that time, I had kidney stones for the second time. So then I was in and out of hospital for that, and I was in so much pain. And then on top of that, when I came out of hospital, I went to a family party and I was jumped. So this whole time I'm saying, it can't get much worse. And then, one weekend I've been jumped. They fractured my skull. So I was told I was never box again because I had a bleed on the brain. They tried taking my ear. They knocked out two of my front teeth. So again, like I said, I was waking up and, well, look at me now. I've got no teeth. So I would just wake up and I'd cry and I'd be there, drinking my coffee, smoking. And that point in my life, it was like, surely there's not a God. And this is where I really questioned it, because it was, well, if there was a God who I've believed in, my mum's believed in forever, then why do I feel this way? You can never explain it unless you've been there. And I remember it was literally thanks to my mum. I went to her and I sort of said, I've used up all my resources. I don't know what to do now. Like I sort of feel like I'm a burden on you guys. My mum would work 12 hours in A&E and then have to look after me in the hospital. It would just felt like I was becoming a pain in the backside, really. And it was honestly at that point in my life where I was like, yeah, I'm sort of done because of the amount of pain I'm causing everyone else, just because I'm still here, but I'm not really living. And then funny enough, it was just my mum who, like I said, is the angel. She was like, why don't you do what you know how to do? And I said, what's that then? She said, just pray. Just pray. And then from that moment on, I thought, you know what, I've done everything else. I might as well just give this a go because there's nothing else to try and do. I've tried everything. Then I started praying, and this is where I say my shift from prayer changed. I no longer prayed to be a millionaire tomorrow or to win the lottery next week or for Father Christmas to bring me this new mountain bike. I sort of started praying where I was angry. I used to let myself, and this is where I was building all the abilities and the way my traits I have now, because I'd set an alarm and I'd be there in prayer and I'd be angry at God for like an hour and I'd F and blind and scream and shout and be like, can't believe you've abandoned me, this and that, this and that. Then after an hour, my alarm would go off, and then it would be like, well, did that make me feel any better? Or has that just made me even more angry? Then it was like, okay, well, I still feel just as angry, but there's no point in wasting any more time on that. So then I would shift into actually, thank you for everything, though. Like, thank you for even letting me sit on the end of the bed under a roof, or thank you for if I wanted to go downstairs and grab a fresh glass of water, I can. And then what I started doing subconsciously was realizing how lucky I was in the world and how selfish it was for me to feel that way. Because there's millions of people who have to fight for life every day, trying to get a fresh glass of water, trying to get food. So how selfish am I that I have all of these basic necessities and I'm not even realizing that? So this was the point in my life where I was like, I'm actually so lucky. And then obviously on top of that, I had my loved ones around me. So my family, my brothers, my sisters, my mum and dad, who hadn't given up on me. And then after that, I would just carry on praying and I would pray for strength. I would pray for clear mind, and then set checkpoints. So help me get to my little sister's birthday in January, help me get here. And then each time I got there, it was like, okay, I'd pray for the next milestone and the next milestone. And then that's where it really started strengthening my faith. And it's crazy to say because I love to tell this to people because this is my story and it doesn't happen overnight. You have to work on things. And it weren't like one night I prayed to God and it was like suddenly I was fixed. It took a many months. And then luckily come the January, I prayed for something to happen. I obviously weren't allowed to box, and then I was asked to be a coach for the boxing team. So it was like, well, I was back into fitness, gave up the drinking, gave up the smoking, whatever you do. Um, and then luckily, somehow, I got away with boxing again, even though I had a fractured skull. They were more worried about my kidney stones. So then I got to box on that actual tournament for the army, won that too. So then that was like, I'd sorted myself out fitness. And like I said, I'd sorted myself out mentally. Come the March, I'd met Anna. And then fast forward a year or two, that's when I was on the Traitors. So like I said, I'd gone through that whole life experience before going on the Traitors. So I was really set in stone with my faith and where it was at, and then mentally and physically. So I couldn't have gone on to the Traitors at a better time, really.
Thank you, Harry. Thank you. That's a really personal journey to explore how you kind of fully became a Christian, I guess,
Mm.
and the importance of persisting in prayer, as Christians would say. Um, so let's look at some of those programs you've been on. So
Mm.
programs like Pilgrimage and Harry Clark Goes to Rome that I'm excited to watch next Thursday. Um, they resonate strongly with RE teachers. And you've got quite a following in the RE teacher world,
Hmm.
because they highlight lived experience, which is what you've just done with us. Are there any stories or memories from your RE lessons at school that you can share with us?
Oh yeah, easy. I mean, the best one I ever learnt was we watched a movie that was called Pay It Forward, and I think that's how I live my life every day now. Like I've done many a things. These shows I do, Harry Clark Goes to Rome, even the book that I bought out, Harry Clark Staying Faithful. All the things I do is I don't really care about the money or who watches. It's just if there's one person out there who's struggling, if they can take a piece of my story, add it to their own, and it makes their life that little bit better, then my job here is done. And then just like you see in the movie, I help that person and then they go on to help someone and then they help someone. And then it's just this beautiful chain effect where actually your little piece, your little bit of peace that you're giving someone helps loads of people because they just pay it forward. So I always love, yeah, when I think back to my RE lessons and when we watched that movie where you pay it forward, and then when you're taught to just basically be nice, because even if you're nice to that one person and then they do that to someone else, like I said, it just creates a beautiful chain effect. So that has to be the best thing I remember learning in school.
So that's a memory from your RE lessons.
Mm.
Do you think RE plays an important role in helping young people understand different stories, different
Mm.
worldviews and identities? And why does that matter today?
Yeah, definitely, because I think it stops people from being closed-minded. I've met and spoke with loads of RE teachers now, and one that I spoke to literally yesterday, she was amazing because she said,
Lou,
yeah, she was amazing because it was so, I had such a great time speaking to her because she didn't necessarily believe in the God I believe in the same way because she's learnt so many things about all other religions. And I think that's the most beautiful thing when it comes to RE is that you're not closed-minded. You're not just forced to be one religion. Actually, you get taught a bunch and you have that opportunity to go and choose what best suits you. And I think that's all it is a personal journey. And giving people them stepping stones to be able to go on their own journey is the best thing that anyone can do. And that starts with RE. And that's why I really love it. And because you're giving kids the opportunity to see into different faiths. And again, like I said, choose what suits them. Because that's all I think faith is. It's all just different sides of a story. Of course, I believe and I know I'm a Catholic fully, but actually, when it comes to it, it's like, well, maybe something did happen and we've all just got different sides of the story. She explained it best of like the elephant, and one person's holding their trunk, one person's holding the tail, one person's holding the foot. They all can feel and describe different things, but it's of the same one thing. So maybe that's what faith is. And that's that, like I say, everything I try to do is to just show that any type of faith in your life can be great and any faith can help you in ways that you need it to help you. And that all begins with RE.
and I love those kind of two aspects of RE that you've pulled out there, that importance of being open-minded and open-minded to understanding that there are
Mm.
different views, worldviews out there, different religions, and understanding one another, and that that's not threatening,
And
but
also,
also that it's your
yeah,
personal journey. Go
and
on.
also with RE, it's like that doesn't even just necessarily lead to faith either. It
No,
leads
not
to
at all.
every everyday life. So they're qualities you can take on in everyday life that I have. For example, RE isn't just teaching you about faith and the different faiths, it's actually just teaching you about different views. If you learn how to love and have peace in your life with people with other beliefs, but that means you can also learn to have peace in life and love in your life when people have different opinions to you. And just especially in a world like today, where if someone disagrees with someone, they drop bombs on them or something like that. It's we've never needed it more. And I think that's why I love Harry Clark Goes to Rome so much, because in the start, you see me with my friends, my family, everyone that makes me me. And actually, when you get to realize that these people who are around me aren't Catholics, it's just me and my mum and my brother and my sisters, but my dad doesn't really, my older brother doesn't, my girlfriend doesn't, my best friend doesn't, who I'm playing darts with. None of these people in my life believe in the same way I do. But guess what? We still have love, and they're the closest people to me. So it just shows that actually no matter what you believe in, love comes first and you can still get on and still have peace.
Thank you, Harry. We better get to some of these
Mm.
TV programs. So we'll get to Harry Clark Goes to Rome in a minute. So after Traitors, you went on pilgrimage, the road through the Alps, which
Uh-huh.
was shown this time last year. Why did you choose to take part in that experience?
Do you know what? It was just because I was given the opportunity. Like it's simple answer. It's like everyone always goes, "Oh, how come you're speaking about faith now, 2 years later, and things like that? And my simple answer is because someone's let me. Someone's asked me the question. It's very funny because it's like 2 years ago when I was on the Traitors, if someone had asked me the question, I would tell them. But I'm not one of them people that would say, hi, I'm Harry Clark and I'm a Catholic. It's very much that I've just been given the opportunity to do these things. And like when the pilgrimage came around, I remember my manager ringing me going, "Oh, hi, Harry. We've had this come across our desk. Are you religious at all?" And I was like, "Yeah, definitely." Like quite big as well. And he was like, "Oh, I never knew that." And it's like, "Well, you never asked." So it's like, well, this is the thing. So now today, that's why I'm so grateful because actually the only reason these things have come around is because people have given me the opportunity and they've asked me the question. So it's nice. So when their pilgrimage came around, of course I was going to do it because I never even knew it was a show, but of course I'm like going to go on a pilgrimage. And it was funny because at that point in my life, again, like I said, but previously when I mentioned the army story and finding faith, my faith had sort of taken a back seat at that point because I had obviously been on the Traitors, was invited to every red carpet in London, made the most out of the free booze and stuff like that. So I was losing myself and my faith had taken a back seat. Went on Celebrity SAS, and I mean, people can see how that went, and I just wasn't fully prepared. And then it was funny because I remember that whole time then from the summer to the September when I got the call, I was just praying for a sign. And then it was like how like there couldn't be a better sign that this has come from God when it's not only just me going on the pilgrimage, but includes work as well. Now I don't know how I could call that work, but it was, because I needed a pilgrimage in my life, and then actually it was filmed, so it was basically bringing my faith alongside my work, and it was like, well, this is perfect, and this is definitely a sign because this is
Yeah.
all I've been asking for.
So you went on pilgrimage. Every pilgrimage confronts people with moments of challenge and self-discovery. So were there parts of the journey that shaped or shifted your story, your inner story, in unexpected ways?
Yeah, I think it was funny because when I seen the beauty of what humans had created and how you can connect with one another, that made me really feel like I was at home. I don't know, it's the weirdest way to explain it. It was just like I felt like I was right. And the pilgrimage was like, imagine my faith was like cloudy. I always explain the pilgrimage was like the cloth or the wipe that cleaned the lens and sort of let me see through it and sort of, yeah, I'm heading in the right path. But it was funny because if anything, the pilgrimage left me with more questions. And it was actually, how do I go deeper? Because I didn't necessarily at that time believe in the church. I didn't feel like I had to go to church every Sunday. I didn't feel like I needed to believe in the church because what's happened in the history of the church and things like that. I felt like I'd be close to God, sat on the end of my bed as I can be going to church. So it left me with even more questions, if anything, because I still felt like at that point I was a modern Catholic, one who didn't necessarily want to follow in the rules, one who didn't believe the Bible word for word. So like, how would people find that? But it was like, at that point I didn't really care, but I was still very secluded in like I like to pray alone. Didn't want anyone watching, mainly because one, I didn't want people to think I'm just making it up and doing it for a laugh for a TV show. But two, because it is just a private moment, and it's a personal connection, like I always say to everyone. So yeah, so the pilgrimage was both amazing because it was the cloth, like I said, that cleaned the lens, but it was also challenging because it left me with more questions. And it left me with, am I even a Catholic? Or is there even because surely if I'm a Catholic, then I'm a bad Catholic because I don't believe in the way that everyone else does.
It was definitely leading to you towards Harry Potter goes to the Rome,
Yeah.
wasn't it? I've got one more question about pilgrimage. Um, there were real conversations between you as pilgrims that were very powerful moments in that program, powerful moments of shared storytelling and understanding. Are there any of those exchanges that have stayed with you?
Yeah, yeah. I think everyone really. I couldn't choose one like I connected with all my pilgrims on like it's so funny calling them pilgrims on just such a different level. Jeff, for example, Jeff Brazier, he's like my second dad. I'm like his surrogate son or whatever they call it. We still message each other all the time because he was so interesting to me because he had so much time in this industry that scares me. And he believed in like an energy. And it's just interesting because it's like, well, maybe the energy you believe in is the God I believe in. It's just come to you in a different way. So there's conversations like that, and you sort of deep dive into the people's lives and how they live. And it was crazy to see Jay, for example. Jay from The Wanted was amazing because it was like he used to go to church, but now he no longer feels accepted. But why doesn't he feel accepted? Because he had a bad, say, go in with one priest, but then it sort of ruined his whole view of the religion for like the rest of his life. And to me, that was sad because it's like that's not the case. Like it's the same with everyone. When the scandals happen in the church, you can't brandish the whole religion with the paintbrush. It's someone who's abused their power, just as if it's a normal office job in London. You still get these people all over, and they should be tried and tested as human beings, not because of what faith they believe in or what religion they come from. So like conversations like that will always stick with me.
Well, we better talk about your new program. So we're
Mm.
about to be able to watch Harry Clark Goes to Rome, which follows you returning to a place that's deeply connected to your Catholic Christian story. Why was it
Mm.
important for you to make that journey now?
Yeah, I think it was if you want the original, like the stories of the origin of this story, Harry Clark Goes to Rome, it starts at the pilgrimage, funny enough. So when we were staying at this hostess's pilgrim house, it was in the middle of the Alps somewhere, and this was the night where me and Jay woke up and had a bath together, and the next morning,
I
but
remember it.
yeah, she couldn't speak a word of English, and she was lovely, bless her. She could only speak German. And we finished filming, and I'm sat there with Tom, who was a producer at TVC, and we've got my Google Translate out. And basically, she said to us, long story short, that in the winter time, this whole farm is covered in snow, so they have to move back up to the top of the Alps and not be in the valleys because otherwise they're covered in snow. So everything needs to be gone before the winter. So she was like, "Here's my thank you for you guys, like my present." She brought us loads of homebrewed beers. So you can imagine, I'm sat there with Tom now, and we're just having these homebrewed beers, just chatting, and he's asked me, we start firing questions, and like I said, my ideas are always firing from my head. And he was like, "Oh, what do you want to do next?" And I explained like the army, how I want to help people with mental health and etc. etc. And he was like, "Yeah, but what would you want to do as a Catholic?" And I said, like, well, right now I feel like my faith is deeper than ever, but I still have so many questions. I still have so many questions because, like I said, I'm a modern Catholic. I'm this, I'm that. And then he said, "Well, what would you do?" I was like, "Well, I'll just go to Rome and try and ask the Pope these questions." And he sort of nudged me and laughed at me and was like, "Yeah, all right, mate." But that's where the idea was born, because it was, if you have a problem in school and you can't really get the right answers from your teacher, you can always go to the head teacher or to someone else. So it just made sense for me to want to go to Rome, because even if you walk the streets, you can find a priest or a nun around every corner and you can ask these questions. And I think that's the best thing as humans we can do, is learn from as many people as we can try to learn from. So yeah, that's where it was born, and that's why I was just like, I need to go to Rome now.
Well, I know you've seen the whole program. I
Mm,
haven't. I've just seen the trailer. And in the trailer, you talk about confession or reconciliation.
mm.
Um, was that an important part of your experience whilst you were in Rome?
Yeah, definitely. I think I was a guy who never really believed in confession. Just mainly because I feel like, what's the point in the priest? I shouldn't have to tell the priest all of these deep, darkest secrets. And then, because as humans, we judge like subconsciously. We don't mean to, but you would just sit there and be like, "Oh, that's a bit of a rough one," or "He's a bit of a nutcase." Like I just never wanted to go to especially my local priest as well. How do you expect me to go to my local priest, tell him what I've been up to for a week, and then him say good morning to me and my mum the next day, and not feel any type of way about me? So it didn't really make sense to me, and I felt like I said, I could always do it at the end of my bed and just say, "Forgive me, Father, I had sinned," and that was enough. So when I went to confession, when I went to Rome, before going to Rome, I got to meet my local priest, funny enough, who works in Oscott now. And he said one of the best things about going to Rome is to do confession, because then it just sets you up for something even better. Like it just sets you up to be free, and then you can really enjoy and experience the moment. Because if you're there knowing you've sinned, then you're not really taking it all in, because you're a sinner currently. So it was like, okay, fair enough. But then at the same time, I was still so scared because I hadn't been for 10 years. And it was like it'd gone past that point of, because I haven't been in so long, I feel like there's no point in me going back and doing it, because I'm even worse now. Like I've gone past that point of saving. So when I went to Rome, obviously that was a massive thing for me to do and to try it, because yeah, it just made me feel so free.
So there was a burden, and you felt
Mm.
confession really changed that for you.
Yeah. And also when I went to Rome, I wanted to be so open-minded. I was on a pilgrimage that I wanted to do everything that was advised for pilgrims to do to get the most out of the journey. So it was like, okay, cool. When I'm going to Rome, I'm going to try everything I'm told to do, even the 24-hour fast, confession, the way you do Eucharistic adoration, things like that. I was like, well, I'm going to give it all a go, 100%. So I try and get the most out of this journey because I don't know if I'm ever going to be back to Rome, like this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. So yeah, that was my thought process going there.
So, were there any challenging moments for your personal faith on your journey to Rome and your time in Rome?
I wouldn't say there was necessarily any personal challenges. If anything, my faith just got deeper. And the only personal challenge that's happened now, since especially being back, is I've got that Catholic guilt even worse now. If I sin or if I say the oh my G word, I'm like, oh, I can't believe I've just said that. I've been in Rome. So if anything, the challenges are harder now because of the experiences I've had out there. It's made it harder because I feel like I'm more of a Catholic now than I've ever been in my life. It's like when I do something wrong, it feels like a way bigger burden than what it did before. I could just brush it off before. So actually going out there to Rome, there wasn't necessarily any challenges because I was just an excited kid who was ready to learn. So there wasn't any challenges in that way. And obviously the way that I was taught and the way that I was spoken to by everyone I met really shocked me because there's such a misconception of the church. Like it has modernized. Like everyone I met out there was so humble and was so, who are we to judge? The church is open for everyone. No matter what you believe in or how you believe, we're not here to judge. We're sinners. We still mess up every day. They felt like their relationship with God was in a wave. So it was so nice to go out to Rome and see how normal it was to feel the way I feel because the people in the Vatican feel the same way. And it was like, what do you even mean? So it was mind blowing. So yeah, I wouldn't say there was any challenges when I was going there and was there. It's just probably after now that I've left, it's like, oh no, I can't believe I've just said that, or I can't believe I've just sinned here or there.
It's interesting, the idea that everyone has questions, that you talk to
Mm.
people from lots and lots of different religious worldviews, and they will talk, however long they have been in that faith, they will talk about still having questions. So you've talked about how being on pilgrimage kind of wiped the screen for you. Um, and it feels like this journey and time in Rome has continued to shape and deepen
Mhm.
your belief. Um, and you've given us some examples of that. Are there any, is that a journey that's continuing?
Yeah, I think well, I mean that just leaves me with more ideas of what I want to do next. So hopefully, again, I get another opportunity. Hopefully, people watch this show and they enjoy it, and then it gives me an opportunity to do what's next. And I think, well, the easiest question is now I've been to the epicenter of my faith, but what do other faiths look like? Like a Harry Clark, why am I a Catholic? Because I was made to be a Catholic because my mum put me into the church. But actually, why am I not Jewish? I've never lived with the Jewish people or how they believe. I've never gone to a synagogue. I've never lived through the Muslim religion. How does that look? How do they pray? I've never seen the Shaolin monks in Thailand. How do they live? What do they get up to? How do they pray? So it leaves me more with, okay, I know it's funny because now I can tell you that I'm 100% a Catholic. I feel it in my heart. That's what's changed from Rome. But it's more left me interested okay, why does everyone else believe in what they believe in now? Not in a way to try and convert them. It's just
No,
interesting.
no.
And I think everyone at home, it would be good to see as well. Like, why do the Shaolin monks wear orange and why they like have superpowers in that or whatever they do, out in Thailand, or why do the say Jewish people believe in the way they do and how come they don't believe like Catholics do if Jesus was a Jew and then that our religion's based off Jesus, who they believe in. So it's like it's mad. Yeah, it's just that's what leaves me interested now.
One of these days, you're either going to be an RE teacher, or you're definitely going to be the poster boy for RE teachers. So, I can guarantee teachers will be watching on Thursday. So there's plenty of those in the world. So lots of people watching. And no doubt they'll be using Harry Clark Goes to Rome in classrooms. So thinking about your Christianity, your lived experience, what do you hope that pupils are going to learn from your lived experience and the story that you share?
Do you want me to put it simply? I think I hope they learn that it's not that deep. And I mean that might be kind of scary for teachers to hear and things like that because religion is very deep. But actually I hope they can look at me and think it's not that deep. You know, they shouldn't be getting bullied or whatever for what they believe in. They shouldn't be getting called Bible bash. They shouldn't be scared to believe what they believe in. You know, a main reason for me doing this show is my little sister's religious or believes in God. I don't even think her friends know that. But if she can see me on a BBC One show sprouting that I love God and that I'm religious, then hopefully she gets that confidence where it's like, okay, well, like my big brother's cool. He can say it. So why can't I? You know, why can't I believe? And then the main thing I hope kids can learn as well is when I say it's not that deep is that they can look at me and see in my life now, I would tell you that I would rather live 90 to 100 years believing and be wrong than live 100 to 90 years not believing and still be wrong. You know, so at the end of the day, it's like, imagine I died tomorrow, touch wood doesn't happen, and there was no God. If you came to me and said, "Oh, Harry, do you regret living your life believing in God when there is none?" I would tell you absolutely not. Because what it teaches you to do is teaches you how to love one another. It teaches you how to be nice. You know, love thy neighbor as I've loved you. It teaches you how to live your life to the best possible way of living your life as a good human being. So actually, if you look back on it, when you get to the end of your life, even if I'm wrong, I don't really care because it's taught me through the way of its teachings how to just be the best possible version of myself. And if I've only got one shot at this life, and all of us do, then why not make the most of it? Why not be the best possible human being I can be? So I hope, yeah, that kids can watch it and be like, it's not that deep. You know, I can believe in what I want to believe in. And just on top of that, love everyone else as I would like to be, like, you know, treat everyone as you want to be treated, really.
And I really pick up from that normality. You want to make it normal
Yeah, yeah.
for your little sister and for other people. And I liked what you said there about actually people should not be called out for believing in something. It's absolutely their right. It's
Mm,
perfectly normal. So as we come to the end, your story continues to
mm,
unfold. I'm loving the idea about Harry Clark going to visit a synagogue or going to Jerusalem or to
mm.
Mecca. But what chapter comes next for you? I can see that maybe those are in your head. Have you got
Yeah.
anything you're allowed to tell us about? What chapter's next for you?
Do you know what? No one's got me in a room yet to speak with me. I think everyone's tried keeping me away because, again, obviously, I'm super excited for this show to come out. I can't wait for everyone to see. But like I said, do not fear because every time I'm trying to go to sleep, these are things that are sprouting at my mind. That was just one idea, and I think I just thought of that now as we was talking. You know, the Harry Clark, why am I a Catholic? So yeah, like I said, I haven't had any formal chats yet. And again, if I did this, they probably do it on purpose because they know I would tell you. You know, like I'm the worst. Funny enough, believe it or not, I'm the worst secret keeper ever because it makes me so excited. So they tell me right at the end if I've got whatever's coming next. But no, yeah, like I said, hopefully I get the opportunity to carry on. Hopefully everyone loves it, and hopefully people want to see more. And then it just gives me the ability to do what people want to see. So if that's in the line of faith and they want me to try out their faith for or other religions, that's perfect. You know, if they want me to try and meet people around the world to see why they do what they do, you know, like a Harry Clark meets, you know, I go and meet someone like Donald Trump, and then I go and meet someone like to wonder why they don't have this peace in their life or why they feel the way they do about certain things or what they believe in. You know, that would be quite cool. And then it's also, I have the ideas of going to try and do, you know, like the military and try and help people with the military, show kids especially that obviously the army is not all bad, but then the kids who are in the army to show them that civilian life's all not all bad. So trying to make a bridge there. You know, I just have so many things that's happened to me in my life. I have so many pathways of authenticity that I just want to give everyone so they can keep resonating with a cancelled kid from Slough. And that's it really.
Well, Harry, thank you so much. The only thing that leaves me to say is Monday, Thursday,
Mm,
the 2nd of April in the evening, you can watch Harry Clark Goes to Rome, or if you're listening to this and watching this after that, it's going to be on the iPlayer for you. And we'd love to hear about how you use it in your classroom.
mm.
Thank you very much, Harry.